Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. I'm so glad you're with us wherever you're joining us. We welcome you. If you're joining us on the airwaves here in Santa Barbara, California at TVSB, we welcome you. A lot of you from, I think, about 104 or 105 countries are finding us at goodlifetelevision.org. We're so grateful. And you can find at goodlifetelevision.org, you can find all the long-form interviews of these incredible guests. You can also find what we call power clips. So we break those up into some of the great moments, and we think you'll enjoy them. These are people from all walks of life. It's all good stuff. We don't ignore suffering or difficulty. In fact, we're going to be talking about difficult situations in today's program. So we don't ignore them, but what we're dwelling on is the good and the hope and the redemption. So these are stories of overcomers, of entrepreneurs, of people with great life stories, young people, famous people, not famous people. It's a little bit of everything. So goodlifetelevision.org is where you want to go. And now you can also find us, and a lot of you are, at our podcast, which is Good Life Conversations. So all the podcast platforms, just type in Good Life Conversations and you can find us there as well. We're so grateful. I have a couple of good friends with me today. I don't think I can say that on every program, although, I probably should, but these are really good friends. Spencer and Douglas Doman are with me. The Domans have been friends for a long time. And we're going to talk about their great work and their newest book. The book is called The Doman Method, From Special Needs to Wellness by Douglas and Spencer Doman. I highly commend it to you. We're going to talk about why in a second. But welcome, guys.
Great to be here again.
All the way from Pennsylvania. It's always great to be with you. As I was thinking about just you guys and this work. So for those of you that haven't watched previous interviews that we've had with the Domans, and by the way, you can find interviews at goodlifetelevision.org. We cover a lot of ground, different diagnoses of special needs children and so forth. So find those if you can. But I was just thinking about the big picture. And Glenn Doman, your father, your grandfather, an incredible man who's made a big impact in people's lives. And the impact of his work and your work goes on and on and on. I was thinking about that today because of how it's affected our family. Our family, we have a special needs daughter, she's 20 now. Meeting you guys, being introduced to this work and being introduced to the human brain has been life-changing for us. I'm about to speak at something and I'm going to talk about this because how the impact has been so great. Do you ever step back you're in the details, you're the CEO, you're the founder. Do you ever step back and think about this work and just kind of the overall picture? That's a weird question, but
we think about it all the time.
Yeah.
And of course, it comes out that, it's been glorious, the discoveries that we've made, and the children that have benefited, now children from more than 100 countries, 6 continents, 35,000 families from around the world. Well, that's wonderful, looking backwards, but it's just a drop in the bucket, Dean, of the children, the special needs children out there, the millions and millions of children around the world that are not being helped, that are not being respected, and that their potential, we have proven, our parents have proven over 60 years, you have proven the potential of our special needs people, and that is just being wasted and it's being thrown away. And if you look at you talk about suffering, the children who are put on anticonvulsant medications at birth and are addicted to legal medicines at birth because that's what their doctors think are best for them. On one hand, and the children who we have taken thousands of children off of those anticonvulsant medications. They've never had another seizure in their life.
We're in that category.
And they've gone on to be very intelligent and wonderful people. So we have so far to go when we're only just getting started. And it's taken too long. 60 years is too long. It's got to happen faster. Because the kids are waiting, the parents too, who love their children and want the best for their children, and they're just stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Right. Anything to add?
Yeah, well, I think in many ways the book itself is a product of us taking a step back.
Right.
Because we really realize that, this has to be information that any parent in the world can access.
Yeah.
We want this information to live on after us. That's how important it is. And so, yeah, I think that's why we took the time to, put our minds together and actually write the book.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in our case, Ella Claire was on phenobarbital and to anti-seizure, and she was kind of asleep, and you and I would be too if we were on phenobarbital. And then when we were able to wean her carefully under your direction and with the nutrition program and everything else, she came alive, and that's an amazing thing when you have like, who is this person? We can't really find out sometimes if they're buried under some of these medications, or, that's kind of the way I see it. But so let's just set the stage here. So this book and the other book that has been so impactful in our life in terms of what to do about, if someone's watching and they have a special needs child of any diagnosis, younger the better is what you guys always say. Really, the first thing they should do is read this book, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
This is our flagship book for the parents of special needs children. This is the way to start.
And just to give you an idea, that would include any children with a neurodevelopmental delay. So that could be a child with autism, ADD, brain injury, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome. There are so many different diagnoses. Exactly, yeah. There are hundreds of them. But any child with any kind of developmental delay, this is the first step.
Children who have genetic issues where there's a neurological component. We've seen every kind of child with genetic problems, but they come to us because there's a neurological problem. That's of course in the brain, and we can fix that. Right.
So yeah, because I would, what this is worth, like that. That's the way we think about it. Like Susan and I were, in fact, just half an hour ago when we were inside and I was holding the book, she said, man, I wish we'd had that at the very beginning just because it's kind of a guide. So if you are a friend of someone who just had a special needs child, or they're struggling, or there's developmental delay, or any of those diagnoses, this is a great gift. In fact, this could be a life-changing gift to give a roadmap of what to do with that child.
Yeah, and so, the What to Do About Your Brain Injured Child book of my father's that you read, that book he wrote in 1974, and he had intuited all the neuroscience back then, but it hadn't been done yet.
Right.
He knew the brain grew by use and the potentials of the brain, but the neuroscience wasn't there. The beauty is now the neuroscience is there. So in this book, we have more than 24 scientific references, that validates our work in terms of neuroscience. Dad's book, which is a wonderful book, because it tells the whole story of how he created the field of child brain development, but he gives very little how-to-dos. And so, the parents have read that book, but it mentions patterning, but it doesn't really tell you how to do patterning. Well, here we have specific physical programs for children who are not yet walking. We have physical programs for kids who are walking. We want to get them running and jumping. And then we've got cognitive programs, sensory programs, sleep programs, nutritional programs. We've covered it all there, really. And so this is that parents can understand what's going on in terms of brain growth and development, and then actually do something about it using that book.
Right. We're referring to the Doman Method, which is basically all of Glenn Doman's work and all of your work that you've kind of packaged into something now that we're referring to as the Doman Method. Let's start with physiology. And let's start there in terms of your approach to a special needs, brain injured, whatever you want to call, child.
Yeah, so physiology, basically means that, anything that impacts the function of the body itself. And so it's crucial to lay down a foundation of good physiology so we can get the results that we want in speech development, intellectual development, physical development. So when we talk about physiology, we mean things like diet. How does the child's nutrition look? Mm-hmm. Is the child getting supplementation that they need if they've got, issues that we find in the child's blood work, for example? It includes things like sleep. Is the child getting enough good quality sleep? Is the environment good? Is the child getting, being exposed to any, harmful toxins in the air or water that could affect brain development? So all of those things impact the way the brain functions. So a lot of people don't know that outside of the brain, we actually have about 500 million neurons, brain cells, in our digestive tract. So it's one of the reasons why nutrition can greatly affect a child's brain function. And so looking at a child's diet is crucial. And that's one of the reasons why it's the first thing we really address. We've written this to be a practical guide for parents so they can start doing things right away at home. And the first thing we talk about is nutrition.
Right.
Physiology is always the beginning of our program because, as Spencer said, it lays the foundation for everything else.
Right. Yeah, I remember coming home. Things changed in our household. All of a sudden, we were introduced to kale. It was a big change. Our kids went from, I'm having a bell pepper for my snack, but it worked. Cognitive development. So let's talk about that in terms of reading and your approach.
Yeah, so reading's kind of interesting because I think for parents of kids with special needs, they usually kind of divide into two groups. One group knows that reading is essential for their child because they might realize, okay, my child has some kind of learning difficulty or delay, and so reading is essential. And then there are other parents who, I think when they look at their child, they wish reading was a major issue in the sense the child might be having seizures and might be immobile, and so the reading almost seems like a dream to them, far-fetched dream. But what we make the case in the book that reading is essential for every child, and we've actually found that many children who are profoundly brain injured, have very severe developmental delays, actually can be excellent readers, and that reading can help them in their cognitive development, in their understanding, in their speech, and also give their life a whole lot of meaning, that they discover through books and reading.
Yeah, you wouldn't think. I mean, I remember that exact situation. It was like we had bigger fish to fry, but then it became clear like this is very possible and enriching. I mean, imagine a life without reading. I mean, that's rough.
And, it's liberating for parents because they've been told, oh, their child can only progress to this level from an intellectual standpoint. And then all of a sudden they have a 3-year-old, perhaps a severely brain injured 3-year-old, who's reading homemade books independently, where average kids can't read that book at 6.
Right.
And they realize, my child is truly intelligent.
Right.
And to add to that, the brain is an amazing organ. And I think many people have probably heard of the phenomenon where someone who's blind, for example, might have very good hearing, right? So their brain adjusts for the difficulty that the person has by giving them a strength. And so very often we find, for example, with children who are immobile and can't move, their ability to take in information is actually faster and better than an average child. So the brain kind of adapts. They say, okay, well, moving is hard, but I'm going to make learning as easy as possible.
Wow.
And so those kids just take in information with great ease. Yeah.
Are you amazed by the human brain?
Oh, yeah. All the time, every day. I mean, parents are often able to do things that even we, thought weren't possible. So, once they're empowered, understanding the potential of their children and the potential of the brain, we're evaluating children constantly neurologically and shocked that the child made the progress that the child made, in that period of time.
Right.
Yeah, and sometimes a lot of the surprises are positive surprises where, sometimes, because we do work alongside with parents, we fight to help the kids get better. And, sometimes even things that we try won't get results, and
Right.
we'll work at it with parents and give them a different ideas. It will adjust something. And I think sometimes even to ourselves we'll say, are we going to get a breakthrough with this child in this area? And very often those breakthroughs will happen, and we're kind of, amazed by it. Something
Right.
clicks, and all of a sudden it's happening, and that's really special.
Right.
Yeah.
So, stuff that if you don't do stuff, if you don't do a program, if you don't help, nothing happens. I mean, or maybe very little, or maybe not close to as much as would happen developmentally if you didn't do a program. I mean, I'm convinced in our case, very little would have happened. It would have atrophied, it would have gone the wrong way, if we hadn't done something. And I remember, I'll never forget the stained glass in your dad's window or somewhere. This is the place where things that would have happened anyways happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's of course from a critic, saying that, well, it would have happened anyways. Let me just tell you, as a dad of a special needs child, no, it wouldn't. Like, because I saw the trajectory of where we were headed, and seeing the trajectory since, and it's like not even close. So let's just put that to bed. I wish I could have interviewed your dad on the subject.
But I mean, the whole idea of it, and of course that comes from, a parent being told your child's never going to be able to walk, your child's never going to be able to talk, your child's never going to be able to read. And then when the parents get the child doing those things, they go back to doctors and say, look,
Right.
look, my kid's walking and my kid's talking. And they're told, well, it would have happened anyway.
Right.
Well, and in the hundreds of cases of that, and by the way, we've had parents who are medical doctors that were told that by colleagues. I remember a father who was a pediatrician, and the child was born by his friend and partner, an obstetrician. The wife, a nurse. It was a terrible birth, and the obstetrician did everything in his power to make it go right, but it was still, it wasn't his fault what happened. These things, just happen.
Right.
The child was severely brain injured, and the medical dad and the nurse mom did a fabulous program, worked hard, graduated the kid from the program, and had a party, and his friend, the obstetrician, was there, and he said to him, well, it would have happened anyway. And the father, the pediatrician.
No. No.
So it's not just, it
Yeah.
can happen to MDs as well, because they're parents too.
Right. If you're a parent who's been doing this program, we've been doing this program for 18 years, that's not true. Like, but anyways.
And in no case was the parent told, bring him back to me in a couple years and I'll tell you that,
Right.
he'll be reading then, although I'm telling you now he'll never be able to read.
Right.
And, it's such a ridiculous supplement. It's like, that guy, was born poor. He worked his tail off. He's now a multimillionaire. Would have happened anyway.
Right.
Sure, it would have happened anyway.
Right.
Sure, he would have made Federal Express.
Right. Where do languages fit in? And I don't know if that's how much that's discussed in here, but talk a little bit about languages, because that talked about another thing that was not on our radar, when Ella Claire was 2.
Yeah.
But where does that fit in?
Yeah, so we don't, in the book, we don't focus so much on foreign languages, but we do talk a lot about the importance of stimulating kids intellectually from, as early an age as possible, right? So going back to the conversation about limits and limits that are placed on kids, parents are almost always told when they have a special needs kid, your child won't be able to succeed in school, read, speak, whatever the limit is that's placed on that specific child. And parents then will often interact with the child differently because of what they've been told. You know, imagine for a second if we did some kind of evil experiment where we took parents of well children, right? And we just told them at birth, you know, your child is going to have, you know, problems their entire life. They'll never be able to learn or speak. So don't even bother trying to teach them anything. You know, parents are going to interact with those kids and stimulate them in a completely different way because of what they've been told.
Right.
It becomes basically a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
And so what we say in this book is stimulate your children, you know, read to them every day, speak to them in, you know, any language that you can.
Right.
You know, even if you're unsure if your child will understand something, you know, tell it to them anyway, because you've got nothing to lose from that and everything to gain.
Right. Yeah, we're another example of that in terms of you guys told us this, and so we started having the person helping doing the program just speak Spanish, tell Claire, to the point where she's fluent in Spanish is her most favorite thing in life. She prefers it over English. And I'm thinking, what a gift. You know, what a gift to give a cerebral palsy kid, you know, profound, you know, severely brain injured child the gift of languages.
Yeah.
You know, which is another thing we got from you.
The answer is, you know, just as with a well kid, in whatever language, you know, the families speak, we want always for the brain injured child to be exposed to that and have the same opportunity to learn to understand it and speak it. And also we'll teach the child how to read in that language as well. So if a family speaks 2, 3, 4 languages, wonderful. And, you know, from a neurological standpoint, obviously the information in the brain is being stored, the 4 different languages. And of course, the language area of the brain is bigger because of that additional information, and also the quality is better because the connections between the languages, the quantity and the quality is there.
Wow, yeah. So just real quickly, you've kind of already done this, but neuroplasticity, speaking of the science catching up with your dad, everybody's kind of talking about neuroplasticity these days. Could you give like the elevator 30-second
the elevator pitch for neuroplasticity?
The elevator pitch.
Yeah. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change, right? So our, you know, for most of human history, it was just assumed that intelligence was something that was a product of genetics, right? You were smart because your parents were smarter. You were dumb because your parents were dumb, you know, and that was the way people thought about things. And now we know that that's not true at all, right? That our brain can not just change quickly in childhood, it can even change throughout our lives, right? So if you and I decided we're going to pick up another language or learn a musical instrument or do something new, it would change the connections of our brain cells, you know, and our brains would change. And so this book is all about neuroplasticity. My grandfather described neuroplasticity as the brain grows by use. Meaning the more you use your brain, the more you stimulate it, the more activity you do, it will change. And by the way, he was attacked a lot for that idea. He was called crazy, you know, and like my dad said, we kind of filled this book with, you know, dozens of scientific references showing that it's not crazy, that it's well-established science.
Yeah, it's accepted now.
It's accepted, yeah. It's you know, foregone conclusion at this point. And so what we do is we say, okay, what are activities that drive neuroplasticity? Because there are many things that drive neuroplasticity, but some things have a lot more value than others. So what are the activities that you're going to get the best bang for your buck, you know, that's worth your time? And that's what we've tried to put into this book.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, somewhere your dad must just be thrilled.
Yeah.
He's probably with my grandfather. We only have a couple minutes left. The book, again, The Doman Method, Spencer and Douglas Doman, From Special Needs to Wellness. If you have a special needs child, if you know of anyone who has a special needs child, please put this in their hands. It could change their life in like 1,000 ways, and our family is one example. Yeah, I was reading here, we, the staff of Doman International, are very enthusiastic about the potential of brain-injured children. That encompasses the full range of children, the most profoundly brain-injured children in a coma, all the way up to those who are a few grades behind their peers cognitively. You know, I said this in the previous episode, but one of the things I remember from being in your auditorium 18 years ago was, you know, there's no such thing as false hope, but there is such a thing as false despair. You guys are really hoping against hope for the most profoundly injured people in the world. And that takes real vision. And I guess maybe part of that comes because you've been doing this for a long time and you've seen the results. But just talk about that for a second, hope. Because, again, it's hard to see. I remember being in the NICU, looking at Ella Claire. Her head was half caved in because they drained this fluid. And I remember praying, number one, a lot. But then also, you know, you're kind of just wondering, like, and then when we came to see you guys, you're kind of wondering, like, how is this going to be good, you know? And it's hard to describe 20 years later, like, how this has been so good for our family, even the hard parts. Because what you guys are prescribing here in terms of programs, it's hard. You know, it's hard work. And hard, we always think is bad. Hard can be good, you know, is one of the things that I'm discovering. Humans don't like hard. But if God asks you to do something hard, if he gives you that child on purpose, knowing it was coming, not surprised by it, God's not surprised by brain injuries, then there's a purpose, you know, and it changes your whole world, your whole family, I'm giving a sermon here now, but talk about hope and kind of trying to instill that in a family to say, I know this is hard, but it's going to be worth it.
Yeah, so I think, you've made me think about a lot of things with that. But I think that, even during our Doman Method course, which is our first course for parents, I tell parents that, you know, it might be hard to understand this now, but you're entering the most meaningful years of your life.
Yes.
And one day you'll look back at this and see it for the beautiful time that it is. And, we are hopeful. I don't think we try to hide that, you know, and we, sometimes even though, you know, our kids have big wins and big changes, but there are always going to be outliers, right? And there are sometimes children that have slower progress than others. And I see it as our responsibility as an organization to have hope in children, because I've just found that when we keep fighting, we'll push through. We'll reach that next thing. You're never sure how long it's going to take or how much work it's going to take. But I just remind myself of that. And
and you'll never regret doing it.
Right.
You know, when you're on a rocking chair someday, you're going to be, at least the way I think is, I'm so glad we stayed in the fight. Mm-hmm. I'm so glad we didn't give up. You know, and you guys have helped us to not give up over the years. And it hasn't been easy, but we're grateful.
Well, I'll let my dad add something here, but I was sitting across from parents about 6 months ago, and I was actually in their backyard, and the dad said to me, you know, all this time we thought we were trying to heal her, but she healed us.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
The parents were reflecting on how much they had changed as people, and they said that we're a lot better people now. Just
turns out it was us that needed the healing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, you know, Dad started out as this, you know, as the Doman Method was, you know, being formed by teaching other professionals about it so that they could then go to, more parents and help them. And of course, that's vital too. I mean, the more children we can help, the better. That's, you know, our number one goal in life right now. But he realized that when he started to teach parents why the brain could grow and develop, and teach the parents that they could actually do the therapy, we're really a research and a teaching organization. We find new ways to grow and develop the brain, and then we teach parents how to do that.
Right.
And he discovered that parents could get better results than therapists could get.
Right.
And why? Because parents have the love and the determination that no professional can possibly compete with.
Right.
And that love and determination, of course, includes hope as well. So it really gets down to love. And where did that come from?
Yes, that's beautiful. So the book again is The Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness. Douglas and Spencer Doman. And Glenn Doman was famous for teaching parents like me for something that he learned on the battlefield, which is we never leave the wounded behind. And I'll tell you what, this family doesn't leave the wounded behind, and we're grateful, and so are many, many tens of thousands of people around the world grateful for their work. So thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Great pleasure.
This is Good Life. We'll see you next time.